Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where we talk about crime dramas I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Rebel. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, obviously, at the end of last episode, Cruz decided that he is going to take on the case, and now it comes into a situation of trying to find out, obviously, it's mainly the correlation between the valves and people being sick. It's more so about, they end up having to more so than anything having to prove, because alone they don't have enough that it's kind of a surefire case. So the whole point of the episode is to find a patient X, someone who is a clear example of someone who got this particular valve, got sick, got the valve removed, and actually improved. So you need to Rebel the entire episode of trying to find that patient X, and that patient X ended up being Jason. Her and Lana go looking for him, which he's dealing with his own thing this episode because he's a teacher, but now he's he has a swastika was sprayed on his garage, but he's painting over it. He did it but it's still visible enough, but it's Lana was able to pick up on it because it's she's got her eyes trained from being a cop. So it's a situation of, his he's at first he's very short towards Rebel, but it's the valve situation ended up being what it was, but now it's a thing of he's got such a big dilemma in his own life because basically one of his students is trying to ruin his life because basically he's going to lose his job because they have a zero policy on assault, and apparently he assaulted the student, but he's saying that this student is calling him slurs, doing all this stuff, and he's like, the kid's a Nazi, but obviously to everyone, because even when Rebel sees us, wasn't what I was expecting, but Lana's you're expecting him to look a little differently, because it's you expect them to be in a CC uniform or something like that. It's that's not how they roll these days. So obviously, but for Jason, it's his entire life and I love that him being it's that kid is a walking human form of that valve that caused him so much pain. So Rebel is willing to help him, even being there in front of the disciplinary group or whatever. That's it's the hearing or whatever, and it's this is more of a formality, but it's because they are so stingent about it, because it's they're the physical assault, but it's no, he's telling you there is other abuse happening towards Jason, and you're not doing anything like that. The swastika being drawn on, it's because it's he hasn't brought any proof, and there's nothing that suggests that the student did it, but it's they're not trying. For her, it's your tolerance on hate speech and stuff like that, I guess none of that matters under these circumstances, But because the student's the guy's basically trying to suggest Jason's into him, so which Jason was that brat, that's never come up before now, so him doing that now is almost just he's rubbing it in my face, because Jason, the reason why Jason had chased after him in the first place, because he caught the kid in his classroom writing the word homo or something like that, and so basically he was running after the kid, and as the kid was running, he kind of grabbed him, and I guess the sudden stop or whatever, and maybe him yanking a little bit made the kid fall back and hurt himself. And it was looking at this surveillance footage, it looked like it was just kind of a thing of he grabbed the kid kind of stopped short, and it just kind of he kind of fell back before. It didn't seem like it was on Jason's part, but also Jason apparently was getting called out by other students for basically not being nice. And it's not being nice isn't this, it's one thing. You can't really correlate that to just being a quote-unquote assault and everything, It's this student said you, it's let me talk about Sadie. She spelled, context, with a K, and it's when I try to tell her it wasn't spelled that way, she was but I've always spelled it that way, and it's did you hit her? Yeah, I hit her with a C minus, so... but at the same time, Lana's visiting the kid's mom. And the sad thing is she has to be my kid's not a Nazi. I didn't raise a Nazi. It's sad. You have to say that over and over again. We should be able to, the perfect society, Nazis wouldn't have never existed in the first place. They wouldn't have the weird fucking resurgence they've had, so there's that whole thing. But it's it's weird that you shouldn't have to go through your life being oh, by the way, I'm not a Nazi. That should just be natural. That should be a thing of oh, you shouldn't have to be like, oh, I'm not a Nazi. That should just be like, no one should be a Nazi. That's just, but once again, world's not a perfect world. And so, obviously, she's like, oh, here's my son, so-and-so doing blah, 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 blah when he was younger. Not something a Nazi would do. Oh, here's him in 5th grade sharing. Not something a Nazi would do. It's like having, but I guess it's because the teacher said it over and over again, kind of referring to him as a Nazi, and stuff like that. Because at first I was scared when Lana showed up, because I was like, oh, because if he's a Nazi, maybe his mom is, and like, but it's like, I was like, oh, she seems like fine with Lana, so I was like, maybe just the kid thinks his own lane. But then but Lana noticed, it's like, hey, you have Rebel's book. I work with Rebel. I just want to make sure that, like, you know, obviously, like, we're getting the full picture, so I'd like your son's password, please. And, you know, and so gets the password, and I love, you know, because obviously for Rebel, it's like, you know, Jason ends up getting fired, but it's like, nope, this isn't over with. I am she's like, I am restless, I am relentless. The fact of the matter is, I am exhausting. I will not stop. Like, I will just basically be a burden to you to kind of work this out. But then, like, the mom busts in and it's like, wait, you're a member of, like, the white boys? It's like, this is what, it's like an incel group. She's like, this is what you're a part of. They found the spray paint. They seen some drawings. And she's like, well, say goodbye to your friends, and literally smashes the computer in front of him, steps on it. And as she leaves the room, she leans into Rebel. I'm a big fan. I love that. I was like, that's a baller ass move, dude. So I was like, that's sick. And it's like, hey, so Jason can get his job back, and every one of those people there has got yolk on their face. All the shit they were causing Jason, all the problems, and this little shit over here got found out to be the, well, little shit that he was. So things kind of luckily worked out on that front. Another angle is Cassidy getting her job at her dad's law firm, which, like, obviously she was pacing back and forth on deciding on how to handle it, and then, like, Cruz, she finally confronts Cruz about it. She's like, give you notice. He's like, notice? And she's like, I'm quitting. He's like, you're quitting. It's just like, yeah, to work at my dad's. And eventually he was like, no. She's like, no to the notice? He's like, yeah, so, no, just pack your shit and go. And she's like, wait, what? Because he got super pissed. But because from Cassidy's point of view, it's like everything in her life has just been so centered around her mom. She talks about it later on, like, her mom's name is why she kind of got in the law school. How she got the job at Cruz's law firm in the first place is because of her mom, too. It's like she feels like nothing is necessarily something she is hers. Like, everything, like, even she's like, I don't even really, yeah, I would, if I could, I'd work for you forever, Cruz, but I don't work for you. I'm working for my mom, and it's just like, you know, it's that rebellious spirit of, like, yes, she understands where her mom is coming from, and oh, it's wonderful my mom fights for the things that she fights for, but it's not like everything that she believes in. And I think it's just she wants to be able to, you know, as she says, spread her own wings, which Cruz is like, okay, I asked for a yes or no answer. I didn't need a whole Whitney Houston song about it. But it's also like, are you thinking long and hard about what you're deciding to do? And so I forgot that the final thing he said to her was kind of like a middle finger, and I just don't remember what it was, because he just, like, slams the door after he said it, and then Cassidy is just like, wow, and just kind of packs up her stuff. And Amir later on finds out about it, and he's like, whoa, don't do this. Like, I get you're pissed at your mom and everything, but, like, don't go join your dad's law firm. Like, they work for like big corporations and stuff like that. Like, and it is also a big spit in the face of your mom, but it's like, for her, it's like, well, that's why, like, she dumped my dad in the first place, because he decided to, like, work with big corporations. But it's like, you know, it's like, oh, giving people the best defense, you know, which Amir's kind of like, yeah, that's what every lawyer says when, like, they sell out. You know, it's like, stay here and, like, fight the good fight, but she kind of leaves. She kisses Amir on the lips, so it's like, and the way she has that conversation with Nate later on about, like, oh, yeah, like, we all kind of have commitment issues. When you look at Mom, the fact is that she bounced, like, between all of our dads, like, kind of shows, like, what it is, like, for her commitment. So it's like, that's kind of robbed off on us a little bit. So I think that's probably kind of implying, like, maybe there's, like, a thing between her and Ymir. But it's like, I mean, I think it's a Amir. It's just like, no, it's just, like, super casual. Like, maybe that's what that's kind of implying. But I did like when she was at her dad's law firm, and she's like, "Oh, I feel so free." She's excited. She thought she'd be a little more conflicted, and he's like, and the dude's like, she's like, "I feel," and he's like, "Beautiful," and she's like, "What?" He's like, "What? Nothing. I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go." And I was like, I love the awkwardness of that. But circling back a little bit, Cruz is interviewing him and Amir are interviewing Helen, and obviously they're asking kind of the questions, but asking like has she ever had headaches before and stuff like that. But for Helen, she was a little snarky with them because she was upset because she felt like, for one, she's like, I'm not. I understand you're not going to be nearly as passionate about this, Mr. Cruz, but I heard from Rebel that how that you are very good at what you do, but it's like I don't feel like you're really like connected with this case. So because for her, it's like what she's been through, what her daughter's been through, because like I want this valve out of me, I want this valve out of my daughter. All the people I reached out to, talked to, became friends with, who are all going through the same thing with this valve. Like there's so many, and that's just the people we know of. There could be other people out there. Like so many lives are impacted. So for her, it's like we need to win this. So she's talking with such passion, and to hear that passion, it makes Cruz feel bad, like making it seem like he's got his own like stuff flowing through his mind about this, because Sarah, Sarah was a part of all of this, but he still was never got a clear-cut answer because he never wanted to it was too much to look into it himself. So hearing Helen say all that stuff, I think it hit him pretty hard. And so when Rebel does show up with Jason and says like, yeah, he basically his sister worked for the insurance company, so that's how he was able to be in a position to like afford the new vow. It ended up being like a different vow, and he's like, I've been feeling way better. And Helen's like, why didn't you ever like report back to us? Because for him it's like, I didn't want to. I started feeling better, and you guys were still sick. He's like, I felt like I would have been rubbing it in your faces, but he's like, I was a coward, and I'm sorry. But Rebel saved me today, so at a yes, I'm here with you guys. You need me to be that patient X, I will. And in that moment, like Cruz kind of starting to break down because he's trying to say like, they are going to poke and prod you, and then Helen's like, why does it seem like you're trying to scare him off? And even Rebel's like, yeah, that's the. But then like he goes off in his room, goes back to his office, plays music loud, and he starts screaming. And Ziggy, who was there kind of like interning, follows her mom and is like, what was that about? It's like Cruz is probably figuring out your Aunt Sarah, like there could have been a way to kind of save her. And it's like Ziggy's like, should you go in there and be with him? But it's like Rebel's like, he needs to let it out, like he has to kind of feel this, like it's stuff that he's been bottling up this entire time, the anger, the sadness, losing the person you love, your best friend, the love of your life, losing that person, and just to find out that there might have been a way to save them, and him not, I mean, granted, he didn't know at the time, they didn't know what was making her sick, but now knowing this, and it's just like the regrets of like knowing what you know now, what you could have done differently, and it's just, but then Cruz ends up coming out the room, obviously Ziggy and Rebel don't say anything. He goes back into the room and tells, Helen, he's like, you're right, like I have not been giving this my best, but I will. You will be getting my best. I will be better. I will be doing better. The fact of the matter is what was done to you, is atrocity. He goes off saying like they will pay for, the life that they stole from you, the pain, the medical bills, getting, both for putting that thing in you, and they will also pay to get that out of you. The fact of the matter is they will pay like twice over. Like we will make them suffer for the fact is that you've suffered, that so many have suffered, and that they've, consider themselves kind of altruistic, but the fact of the matter is that they are profiting off of people's suffering. Like, he's speaking from this passion of, from because, I think that's going to play an actually important role in this, is that, that's not just going to be a motivation. I think it's going to be a part of the thing that comes up in the case. I think his story too, because, the only person who knows the truth is Rebel. Obviously Rebel, I think, Lana and Ziggy are like, know about Cruz's circumstances. I wonder does Cassidy or not. Regardless, I just definitely like I don't think Helen and the others know about it because like Helen when she was saying that stuff to Cruz earlier, like, I don't think she knew that. Yeah, he kind of has a personal stake in this case as well, so. He wasn't really sure. I don't think. Well, obviously he didn't know, but obviously he's making that promise to Helen. But like you can tell she's smiling because she sees that passion in his eyes, the same passion she feels about it. She sees it in his eyes, so she knows she's in good hands now. So I thought that was nice. And at the end, we do see Cruz finally looking through Sarah's autopsy. So other angles to this episode. Grady kind of getting chewed out by that doctor surgeon because she was kind of like because he goes to her because she's a cardiologist and is like, oh, he needs help with the study because he's a gynecologist, so not his level area of expertise, but for her she doesn't want to help him because it's like well, first and foremost it's like you stood me up. She's like, I thought it was great dates we had plus great sex, but it's like you just kind of never contact me again. So I know, played by Abigail Spencer. I was like, hey, Abigail Spencer, that's cool. Obviously, most recently, Timeless. There's something she did after Timeless. I was interested in watching. I don't remember what it's called now. There was something she did after Timeless that I was curious about checking out. I never got around to it. Regardless, I was going on a huge tangent there, but. Eventually, Nate does come back to her, and he's like, yeah, sorry about that. The fact is, he kind of brings up his, relationships and stuff like that, but she kind of cut him off. It's like, you're still making it about you. This is about my feelings, so I'll help you out with this, but you need to take time, and eventually tell me kind of what signs I should be looking for so I can avoid guys like you next time. She's like, yeah, we'll do it over, drinks or something like that. And maybe after 3 drinks, I'll decide that, eventually might end up having sex with you. And Nate's like, wait, you still have sex with me? She's like, yeah, but it'd just be sex. I have self-respect, so I wouldn't date you again. And it's like, and he's just standing there almost like, what the fuck just happened? He had this look about him like that, and I like that. She is the one that does come back later on and says yeah, there are 22, there's 25 people she called up about it, 22 are fine, healthy, and all that, but there are 3 people. There are 3 people who have died from autoimmune disease. So it's damn, okay. So obviously for Nate, it's damn, there is some truth to what my mom's whole thing about this is. So obviously, once again, kind of working, and I like I said, I like that. There's going to be smaller cases involved in these episodes, of Rebel helping people, but it is going to be mainly the overarching and main plot element, at least maybe just over the course of the entire season, I'd assume, maybe I'll change partway through, is dealing with this whole Valve situation and going after the company and everything. And it's okay. So there's that. On a personal level, we have the whole situation with Grady. It seems like the way he was explaining, it seems like when he was talking to his lawyer, he was he was planning on kind of getting divorced from Rebel, but last year when Ziggy overdosed, it changed things for him. Is he decided to stick around just for her sake because he's I couldn't leave then, and obviously he doesn't want to move out of the house now because he wants to be nearby to Ziggy, because he wants to be there because he wants to be in her life, and that foundation, she needs a solid foundation to kind of keep her on the right track. And so Grady is being allowed, what was it, the guest house and stuff like that, because earlier at the beginning of the episode, Rebel's outside shooting a shotgun at a target, and just Grady's kind of hiding out and stuff like that, and Ziggy is kind of pissed at Grady for doing what he's doing, because so, and I feel like that's going to come up in conversation because it got brought up this episode, is Ziggy. It's yeah, she's adopted, but she's still my kid through and through, I probably if they did get divorced legally, who'd get guardianship in that regard. So I'm sure parental rights more so in that regard, what that whole situation. So I mean, it can get nasty. I'm sure divorces can be amicable. Obviously, they're not always. Anything in life, there can be amicable situations. There can be bloody teeth rearing divorces and stuff like that. So. Obviously Grady oh, Rebel didn't want him moving into the guest house. He's like, oh, I'm not moving in. I'm keeping the main house. Because like his lawyer got him hyped up in his head, being like, no, son, it's good. Like, this is your place. She should be grateful for what you give her or whatever like that. And I'm like, that's why I'm like, what do you bring to this situation, Grady? Apparently considering Rebel's like, yeah, I'm the one that pays everything anyway. So I'm like, why are you letting don't get it twisted. Your lawyer's in this because I think she's in it for her own paycheck, but also it's like, don't let her get you twisted and think you're more hot shit than you are or something like that. I don't know. It just seemed like he kind of getting big-headed. So I was like, because that's what I was wondering because of the divorce angle. I was like, are we going to see more of Grady? Turns out we most likely will. I wasn't expecting him in this episode. I was like, oh, he is. So it's like, obviously it's going to be a continued element over the course of the show. But Rebel, kind of tired of him, just like pulls out the gun and like blast his ended up being his client's car, and then and Rebel had to stop at the moment. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, that was a terrible thing to do, Ziggy. It's like, I pointed a gun at your dad. She's like, no, you didn't. You pointed a gun at the car. It's like, and he's kind of, now that she's done that though, like, this could end up into a very nasty vandalism thing that things could get even nastier now because of what Rebel just did. She just kind of lost her cool in the moment. So it's a situation of like, okay, he gets the guest house. The fact of the matter is no charges get dropped, and then Ziggy's suggesting they actually go to counseling because it's like, for her, it's like, when I was like, you told me not to die, like do what I could to fight. I want you guys to actually try and fight for this relationship because that's also like the thing too, like Grady did all this behind Rebel's back. It's not, it's like, yeah, she's on better terms with her exes. Those relationships didn't always end well, but I think at the very least things were a little bit more upfront. I think it speaks volumes that she is on good terms-ish with a lot of her exes, despite like their circumstances and stuff like that. And I think that speaks volumes. So, also the fact is that like Grady was kind of left on an island alone because he was like, you guys agree, and then the other two just like, yeah, what? Oh, you talking to us, Grady? Yeah, don't drag us into your shit. So definitely going to be interesting to see where things kind of go forward with that and seeing what those council sessions are going to look like. Speaking of Ziggy too, she was hanging out with Shawn this episode, and they were kind of kicking it a little bit, and she fell and got hurt like off the skateboard, and she panicked. She was like, oh, I think it's hurt, I think it's broken. And I was like, wow, I didn't expect her to freak out like that, but understanding like, oh, right, that's how she got into Oxy in the first place, was because of a sports injury. And it's just like, yeah, obviously once an addict, always an addict. So Shawn was sitting there like, oh, we could go to that weed shop, but she was like, no, like for him it's like, oh, weed isn't addictive. And she's like, yes, it is for addicts, because it can be a gateway drug. Like if you're someone fighting that, like once you kind of start down that road, you kind of like let that line slip more and more, and you might bring yourself closer and closer, being like, some weed's fine. It's like, and then eventually you might get to the point of like, I mean, come on, like what's one Oxy? So it can be a gateway drug for someone who has addiction, who's still, assuming like a year, I believe sober. So of that vein, in that vein, so, or at the very least, because I think how long she's been sober came up last episode. I'm blanking on it right now. But nevertheless, so I think mending fences is there, because I think he apologized to her. I think he had texted her at the end of the episode apologizing, and obviously she went off with Rebel at the end of the episode before they had a chance to fully mend fences in that regard. But obviously the real sting is, and you knew it eventually was going to come, because Home Dude and Cassidy were having that conversation about, so you sure your family, there's not going to be issues, fallout for you deciding to work here? It's like, yeah, there's going to be issues with my mom, but the fact of the matter is, me and my siblings, we have 3 different dads. And like my mom, my sister Ziggy, she'll side with my mom because it'll turn into whole, it's like, yeah, like mom won't disown me or whatever. She'll just, because I think Nate was like, no, she won't disown you, she'll just yell at you a lot. And so, but, for her, it's like, despite everything going down, like, we'll disagree about things like that. We are family at the end of the day. The moment she said that, I was like, because the files he brought to her, at first I was like, you're going to find out your case is going to be the one your mom's working on, and you're going to be on the other side of it, and lo and behold, it's because it's almost like, because like it's just one of those situations where it's like, I don't know, like at the bare minimum, wouldn't it just make sense not to take this particular case, like from her dad's perspective? But to be fair, it's like you're a company, when a big client, I mean, that company might have already been a big client of theirs, so it's like, well, we're on tap, so we kind of have no choice because we already took this client on, so we're kind of on retainer, so maybe that's kind of why. Or maybe they went out. I don't see him going out of his way to like pick them up as a client. Now, maybe that is the case because he probably needs a lawyer now. So, but look, large corporations usually, like I said, usually have some already on retainer. So I'm assuming this is kind of bleeding over in that regard. But it's like, oh, cool. You said all that stuff before, like, oh no, we're going to be cool. And now you're like, oh, I'm in direct competition with my mom. Also, you know what's what. You've seen the other side of this situation. So that's the thing of like, how can you, but once again, she wanted to make that justification being like, oh, lawyers would get the best defense. So like, how okay with things are you going to be when it comes to like denying what's happened to these people who are sick from these heart valves, So that's going to be a hard thing. And like, you think your family's going to be okay with it turning against you because of it. So your mom's definitely going to be upset with you. Your sister's definitely going to be upset with you. Like a Cruz is obviously already upset with you. So there's there's going to be a lot of interesting developments on that front in that regard. So the next episode is going to be wild when it eventually comes out. Because let's not forget, Rebel still doesn't know. It's not like Cruz told her, because it's like, yeah, that's your daughter's business, and they're telling you it's not mine, to tell you. Because it is a thing of like, she is someone who fights injustices and stuff like that, But like I said, Amir tried to tell her like, oh yeah, they help out big companies and stuff like the bad guys. It's like not exclusively. So now what are you going to do with, not only is this with a company, you kind of know some of the shady stuff they've done, but also at the same time, it's like, now it puts you in more direct competition with your mom. Like, this might end up damaging your relationship with your mom. Like, you wanted freedom from her, and now you're kind of at war with her inadvertently. So, we'll see how things kind of work out. It is, Thursday morning at the time I'm recording this. The new episode actually comes on tonight, I believe there's a new episode tonight. So, I'm really interested to see where things ultimately end up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.